trash man fines me $250 for not organizing my trash. So I comply with his exact instructions. Here's what happened. Subscribe to AmITheA on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. I live in a consolidated county. That means that the city and county governments merged some years back, ostensibly to reduce administrative and infrastructure costs. This is important because services like fire, police, utilities, and trash pickup are now managed by former county officials, and not the city officials. Many of these services are also much more inefficient, and some services have been outsourced to private companies. My municipality outsourced trash and yard waste pickup a few years ago, and the two companies who now do those collections are woefully inadequate, and their services cost more than when the city or county did it. They both have similar sets of rules what can be put out for collection, take fewer types of waste away, and no longer come 2 days a week as the city once did, but now only come 1 day a week. We're all paying more money for less service. Now that the background is done, here's the story. I did some yard work over the course of a couple weekends last summer, cutting some limbs, trimming some shrubbery, and cutting down a dead tree in my backyard. Knowing what the rules are for how much yard waste, limbs, leaves, and such can be put out, I bagged everything that was supposed to be bagged, filling up 3 of them. Things like leaves and small clippings and weeds and such. The paper bags for yard waste from the big box home improvement stores are what they require, so I use those. I just fill them halfway up so as not to make them too heavy for the waste collectors, even though there are no written weight restrictions. However, if a bag is too full, they'll knock it over to spill out the contents so they don't have to pick it up. I cut the larger limbs down to under 4 feet in length, or they wouldn't be picked up. Anything at all they can do to get out of picking something up, they'll do. And they almost always leave a horrendous mess behind when they do pick things up. The pile put out for collection is not allowed to be any wider than 10 feet, nor any deeper or higher than 5 feet, nor may it contain any piece longer than 4 feet. All bags must be placed in a row no more than 3 feet away from the limb pile. My pile was maybe 4 inches longer than the 10 feet, and only because of the tiny ends of the limbs hanging out of the pile. The pile was no higher than 3 feet and no deeper than 4 feet. In other words, it fell within the size limits, except for a few twigs with leaves. I also had the 3 bags, each about half full of clippings and leaves, all lined up exactly as required, and about 2 feet away from the main pile. They were scheduled to come on a Tuesday, but when I got home from work that afternoon, it was all still there. There was a pre-printed notice on my door that my pickup exceeded the prescribed size limits, and the note said that I would be required to pay either $250 oversized load fee or reduce the size of the pile by half to make it fit into the limit. I had the next 2 days off, so the next morning, bright and early, I got out the hedge trimmers. I trimmed the ends of the pile back to exactly 9 feet in length. After carefully laying those trimmed bits on top of the pile, I went to the backyard, where the limbs I had not trimmed up the week before were stacked for the following week's pile, and found 4 long, fairly straight limbs. I removed all the smaller limbs and leaves from these limbs, ending up with 4 moderately straight poles, each about 7 feet long. I marked 1-foot intervals on each pole in fluorescent orange paint, and stuck them in the ground out at the curb in the front yard at the corners of a rectangle exactly 5 feet wide and 10 feet long. I got out the surveyor's tape, the bright pink plastic tape used to mark property corners, and tied it onto and around the stakes at the height of 5 feet. This established a visual outline of the volume I was required to stay within. I made absolutely sure that everything in the pile was completely inside the poles and below 5 feet in height. This required adding almost 2/3 of the remaining pile in the backyard to the stack out front to bring it up to 4 feet 6 inches in width, 4 feet 6 inches in depth, and 9 feet 6 inches in length. No pieces longer than 46 inches. The pile was almost twice as much material as before. This included some logs up to 4 inches in diameter, also each 46 inches long, all within the limits of the 5 foot by 5 foot by 10 foot the waste company mandates. I carried each of the 3 bags of clippings to the backyard and filled each of them as much as possible, while still being able to fold over the tops and staple shut each bag. I also included small 8-inch to 10-inch sections of the ends of larger limbs for added weight. The bags were now completely filled and weighed more than twice what they had before. I had to use the hand truck to get them out to the curb, they were so heavy. Oh, and all the extra clippings I had generated filled up 2 more bags. So now the total was 5 bags, the company limit. I then went inside and called the company, and very nicely asked that they come to pick up my yard waste since they had not done so on Tuesday. They agreed to send out a trucking crew and told me I have to pay the fee. I told them to come on over then. They soon arrived and happened to be the same crew that normally comes to my neighborhood. I pulled a 25-foot Stanley tape measure from my pocket and asked them to measure the poles to confirm that the space was within the required limits. They did so and agreed the pile was not oversized, and proceeded to spend the next 2 hours manually loading it all onto their truck. Oh, and it took both of them to manhandle each of those bags into the back of the truck, too. I told them very nicely and with a smile that I knew what 10 feet was, pointed to the fence where it was marked with orange electrical tape, and thanked them for coming to pick up my yard waste. The 2 tired, sweaty waste disposal guys just groaned, got in their truck, and drove off. There was no additional fee added to my bill for that month. Never has been since. Now, I know they got paid for their time, and I know that I had to do a lot of extra work on my day off, but since last July, I've not once had them leave so much as a single leaf on the ground in front of my house. They had to actually do some hard work, with me standing there in shorts, smiling and drinking cold Gatorade while they were sweating. Next time, just do your job, jerks. This guy definitely comes across as a handyman, I think. He's all about the measurements, it seems. There were more numbers in there than I care to count, but gosh darn it, he got the results he wanted. And I know he's not the only homeowner to have issues like this. We've all seen those people with 4 sticks outside their front yard that are essentially doing the same thing. They're marking off how big a space they can have for stuff like this. I get the feeling these trash pickup guys just didn't feel like doing any extra work that day. Little did they know, they just made a whole other problem for themselves later in the week. Like our original poster said, they were still getting paid for their time, and at that point, they're probably just like, screw it, we're here, we gotta do it, no point complaining. But if you had just had that attitude the first time, there never would have been a problem, and you wouldn't have had to work quite so hard. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below. And don't forget to subscribe. Fast food restaurant says sorry, you only get 1 per customer per visit. Until my father made that an inconvenience for them. My dad is a patient guy and lives to keep my mom happy. The old happy wife, happy life mantra. My entire family goes crazy at Christmas. We decorate everything. Stand still too long and you'll have tinsel and lights on you. Mom was getting out her Christmas table setting and commented that she didn't have fancy Christmas glasses to match the dishes. Cue Dad. Dad usually has TV on while is doing other stuff. Writing, reading, just basically background noise. He was retired and disabled from the army, so he had time and used drive-thru because he walks unsteady. Well, a familiar fast food chain was offering a 99-cent Christmas goblet. It had holly and stuff and a goldish rim, with the menu purchase, 1 per visit. So Dad, to keep Mom happy, drove to the restaurant and ordered a small soda and a goblet. It was about $2. This was a few years back. He asked if he could buy more because his wife wanted a set. Nope, 1 per purchase per visit. So Dad followed their orders. Order a drink, buy a glass. Back in the drive-thru line. He did this 5 times through the drive-thru. Order a drink, buy a glass, order a drink, buy a glass, order a drink, buy a glass. Repeat, repeat. Dad now had 5 drinks that he was just going to take home and had run out of room in the car. Finally, someone seeing that this guy is gonna keep going through the drive-thru and clogging up the system caught on. Next time he gets to the order spot, they ask him, "How many goblets do you need?" Dad said 12. So they allowed him to purchase the remaining 7 for $7, and he didn't have to keep clogging up the drive-thru for a soda order. He said, "Well, I tried to do that the first time." We've still got that fine set of fast food goblets that are an official family heirloom now. I mean, the guys at the fast food restaurant are just doing their job. They have to limit it to one per person so that there's enough for everyone to go around. Of course, there's nothing stopping people from doing something like what your dad did. And yeah, once they catch on to what's going on, it's just a lot easier for everyone involved to just give him what he wants. A lot of the time, saying one per person per visit is enough for a lot of customers. They'll accept it at that, be a little bit disappointed, and go about their day. But then you have people like our original poster's dad, who's just a little bit more persistent. Most of the time, I would say your dad should just be one of those people who takes no for an answer. But considering he's just doing it for your mom and trying to make her happy, it's a little bit more charming and more acceptable, but still, you should follow the rules. There might be 11 other people that roll up today that heard about this promotion and wanted one and wanted to make their wife happy, but now can't get one. The whole one per person per visit is just trying to be considerate of others. As nice as it is of your dad, it's still not taking other people into account. Mind you, one person doing this shouldn't be that big of an issue. It's when everybody starts doing it that it really gets annoying. My husband took away our daughter's bike, so I used his savings to buy her another one. My daughter received a bike from her uncle, my brother, on her 11th birthday. She was over the moon and excited to use it because it was on her wish list for a long time. Days ago, I discovered that while my daughter was at school, my husband reached out to my brother to ask for the receipt for the bike and returned it to the store and kept the money for himself. My daughter and I got home and she started crying after she noticed the bike was gone. My husband was home at the time. He told me he returned the bike and got money in return to spend on something useful for us, since the bike was just there as a distraction, and there was no need for it now since we're in the dead of winter. I was aggravated and lost it on him, saying it wasn't his, didn't come from him, and he didn't pay for it, so he had no right to touch it, especially knowing our daughter's been wanting it for a long time and my brother was decent enough to buy it for her despite barely having money for him to get by. I told him what he did was theft and insisted he hand over the money to me so I could repurchase it, but he said he spent it on stuff for the house and doesn't have any money left now. But I knew about the money he was stashing away in the bedroom that he forbade me from touching, and I took some of it and went out to repurchase the bike while he was out the next day. He found out and verbally lashed out at me, saying I should have never touched the money he was saving for himself, which isn't much, but I lashed right back that I had to do so I could repurchase the bike he took from our daughter. He explained that he didn't keep the money for himself and instead spent it for necessities for our home. But he was at fault for taking the bike in the first place, and he was responsible for getting it back. He yelled at me for almost 10 minutes, then stormed outside and started smoking. My daughter asked why her dad was upset, and that she no longer wants the bike if dad doesn't want her to have it. But I assured her that's not the case and told her she shouldn't feel guilty and to just focus on enjoying her bike. My husband hasn't stopped grilling me about how I disrespected and undermined him and managed to make our daughter hate him after making him look like the bad guy. I again said he shouldn't have touched the bike. End of story. He's called me a thief and juvenile for taking the money from his savings and being sneaky about it. Am I the jerk for the way I got the bike back? I think the jerk in this story is pretty clear. Your husband had no right to take the bike, just like you said. If he's got all this money stashed away and you guys are so hurt for the basic necessities, then that's the money he should be using. I don't know what this personal savings stash he has is for that he can't use it on his family's necessities, and instead needs to sell his daughter's brand new bike to be able to buy groceries. Something's very wrong here. I can't help but get the feeling that something else is going on here, especially considering he was so quick to get so aggravated about it. I don't know. I'm not going to jump to any conclusions. At the end of the day, the little girl has her bike, and I'm sure he's gonna get over it. But he needs to learn that his family comes first, not his personal stash he has hidden under the bed. Restaurant Karen lies about being allergic to gluten, then gets upset when she doesn't get a bread basket. I used to work in a restaurant that was mid-range in terms of cost, but had a very reasonably priced set menu. 3 courses, no choice, but it cost like £10. As such, the set menu was our best-selling product, and it was costed exactly by the kitchen and management. I didn't wait on this table, but heard from the server after they left. One day, two ladies came in, and after they were seated, they said they wanted the set menu, but wanted to sub the desserts for something else. The server tells them, "I'm afraid we can't do any amendments, but all the dishes on the menu are available a la carte if you wanted to order separately." The dishes separate would have cost a few pounds more, but that's it. These ladies didn't want to pay more. They just wanted to sub the desserts. "We can't have the pie as we can't eat gluten."
"Then we can swap the dessert, but there will be a supplement."
"You're discriminating against us because we can't eat gluten."
"It's not discrimination."
"We have to pay extra money because we can't eat gluten."
You get the gist. So we check with the manager and they say they can swap the dessert at no extra cost. They're smug, but whatever. But as standard, we gave out free bread baskets when water's served. We didn't have gluten-free bread, so the server didn't go over with a bread basket. The ladies clocked this, and as their water's being poured, asked for the basket.
"We don't have any gluten-free bread, I'm afraid,"
says the server.
"It's fine, we can have the bread."
"I'm sorry, but there's gluten in our bread, and you've told me you have to have gluten-free dishes. I can't serve you something which might provoke a bad reaction."
They got up right then and there and left. Didn't even touch their waters. They stormed past the host, saying,
"All we wanted was to swap the dessert on the menu."
Well, sorry, Karen, you don't always get everything you want. A set menu is a set menu. Sometimes it's based on stuff that's left over that they have extra of or whatever the case might be. But there's a reason those specific items are cheap on that specific day. You can't expect to swap something out and not pay extra. You're getting discounted items. You can't swap a discounted item for a non-discounted item. That's just not the way it works. So then you proceed to go ahead and lie about it, which does get you what you want, unfortunately. We really shouldn't be reinforcing this behavior, guys. But hey, you gotta keep the customer happy, and when it comes to food allergies in a restaurant, it does need to be taken seriously. But to then be blatantly caught in your lie and walk out complaining about it is just next level Karen. Next time, just be happy with what you get, or do what the server suggested and order a la carte. And then you get what you want, but have to pay the appropriate amount. Would that really be so bad? I used a diamond from my girlfriend's family heirloom for her engagement ring. My girlfriend, 22-year-old female, and I, 24-year-old male, have been together for about 3 years, and I decided around 5 months ago that I wanted to propose. We share a dog and a home, so it seemed the next logical step. She's huge into jewelry, so I wanted to get her a really sentimental ring. At the end of September, her grandma suddenly passed away, and as my girlfriend was the only granddaughter, she was passed down her wedding ring. Her and her grandma were extremely close, so I decided to ask her mom if she thought it would be a good idea for me to use one of the diamonds in the ring for my girlfriend's engagement ring. I should note that the grandma who passed was her dad's mom, not her mom's mom. She told me that as much as she loved the idea, she didn't know if my girlfriend would, and so told me to think about it. I couldn't find anything else I liked as much. My girlfriend didn't wear the ring as she was worried about losing it, so kept it in a box in a drawer, making it easy for me to take without her realizing. It ended up being a beautiful ring, and I thought she'd absolutely love the sentiment of it. Well, I proposed. She said yes immediately, and was absolutely elated until she saw the ring. She told me I'd practically vandalized and ruined the only meaningful thing of her grandmother's that she had, and that I should have asked. I went to her mom for support, but she just kept saying she warned me that my girlfriend might not like the idea. She said yes to my proposal, but refuses to wear the ring, which I just think is disrespectful considering how much money and thought went into it. Am I the jerk? Yeesh, that's a tough one, buddy. I mean, I understand that you're trying to do something nice, but this was something that was very sentimental to her. I would have just left it alone. You could have always bought a ring, proposed with that, and then thrown this idea out to her. And if it was something that she liked, return the ring that you bought and get that whole situation sorted out. That way you still have something very nice to propose to her with and still have that thought in your head if she likes the idea. But given how sentimental this ring was, I really would have just left it alone. While there is the potential upside of it being a very nice thought and of her liking it, if she doesn't like the idea, that's gonna go really badly. And it turns out that's exactly what happened. I'm sure she still loves him and they're still gonna get married, but this was a serious error in judgment from our original poster here. Hopefully he's learned how valuable sentimental objects are to his soon-to-be wife. I'd hate for this to be a repeat mistake for him throughout the years. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. Or if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Jerk, give Am I the Genius a shot. Everything linked in the description.